Miguel Ramirez stood in front of the gleaming glass headquarters of Nexus Technologies, clutching his worn leather briefcase. At 52, his salt and pepper hair was neatly trimmed, and his eyes held the quiet confidence of a man who had fought his way up from nothing. "Today changes everything," he whispered to himself, but not in the way anyone might expect. Miguel had arrived in America 30 years earlier with nothing but $200 in his pocket and a brilliant mind for technology. While working 3 jobs to survive, he developed a revolutionary software algorithm that streamlined supply chain logistics. That algorithm became the foundation of Nexus Technologies, now a Fortune 500 company worth billions. When investors came calling, Miguel made an unusual decision. Instead of becoming the public face of the company, he installed Richard Harrington as CEO while remaining the majority shareholder through a series of anonymous holding companies. Only the company's lawyers and a handful of board members knew the truth. "I want to see what kind of company it becomes when people don't know who's watching," Miguel explained to his wife, Elena, who thought the idea was absurd. "You built this company from nothing," Elena argued. "Why would you hide in the shadows?" "Because I want to build something that lasts," Miguel replied. "Something with integrity at every level, not just when the boss is watching." So Miguel created a new identity as Miguel Delgado, a maintenance worker with a spotty employment record. He arranged to be hired at Nexus Technologies, telling Elena it would only be for a few months. Those months turned into years. On his first day, Miguel arrived at 5 a.m., dressed in the blue uniform of the maintenance staff. He was assigned to the executive floor, a twist of fate that seemed almost too perfect. "Just stay invisible," his supervisor warned. "These executive types don't like to be reminded that someone has to clean up after them." Miguel nodded, hiding a smile. He was about to get a view of his company that few founders ever see. The early years were illuminating. Miguel watched as Richard Harrington transformed from a humble, hungry executive into someone increasingly detached from the company's original mission. The CEO installed a private elevator, demanded the cafeteria stock his favorite $100 per bottle mineral water, and became notorious for firing employees who made eye contact with him in the hallways. Meanwhile, Miguel diligently cleaned toilets, mopped floors, and emptied trash cans, often finding discarded documents that provided insights into the company's operations that even the board wasn't privy to. "You wouldn't believe what I found today," Miguel would tell Elena each night. "They're cutting the employee health benefits while spending millions on executive retreats." Elena's patience wore thin. "When will you end this charade? You have the power to fix these problems." But Miguel wasn't ready. "I need to understand how deep it goes," he insisted. "If I step in now, they'll just put on a show until I leave, then revert to their old ways." So year after year, Miguel continued his double life. He became friends with other maintenance workers, security guards, and cafeteria staff. He learned about their families, their struggles with the company's shrinking benefits, and their frustrations with management that seemed increasingly disconnected from employees. In the executive bathrooms, Miguel overheard conversations never meant for employee ears. He learned how the board was pressuring for cost-cutting measures that would eliminate thousands of jobs while maximizing executive bonuses. He discovered plans to outsource the company's core operations to countries with questionable labor practices, a direct contradiction of the company's public commitment to ethical manufacturing. And yet, despite the growing corruption at the top, Miguel saw something beautiful happening at the ground level. The rank-and-file employees of Nexus Technologies remained dedicated, innovative, and supportive of each other. They were the ones preserving the company's original values, even as the leadership abandoned them. One day, while cleaning the executive conference room after hours, Miguel found himself alone with a young programmer named Sophia Chen. She was working late, trying to fix a critical bug in the company's flagship product. "You shouldn't be in here," Miguel said, pushing his cleaning cart into the room. Sophia looked up, dark circles under her eyes. "I know, but the debugging lab is closed for renovations, and I need to fix this before the release tomorrow." Miguel nodded and began quietly cleaning around her. After a few minutes, he noticed her growing frustration. "Having trouble?" he asked. Nothing I can explain to a janitor, she said, then immediately looked horrified. I'm so sorry, that was incredibly rude. I'm just stressed. Miguel smiled. Try inverting your logic sequence. Sophia stared at him. What did you say? Your algorithm. It's checking conditions in the wrong order. Invert it. Skeptically, Sophia made the change and the error disappeared. How did you? I used to code a little, Miguel said with a shrug. Long time ago. This began a friendship that would prove crucial in the years to come. Sophia, unlike the executives, saw Miguel as a person worthy of respect. She greeted him each morning, brought him coffee occasionally, and sometimes sought his surprisingly insightful advice on coding problems. What Miguel couldn't tell her was that he was watching the company's culture split into two distinct worlds: the executive level, where greed and self-interest reigned, and the employee level, where people like Sophia still believed in the company's mission and supported each other despite management's increasing hostility. As his 15th anniversary as a janitor approached, Miguel knew the time for action was finally coming. The company he had built was at a crossroads, and the path chosen now would determine its fate for generations. Elena, who had supported his unusual mission despite her reservations, finally gave him an ultimatum. 15 years is enough, Miguel, she said firmly. Either you do something with what you've learned, or I have to question what this has really been about. Miguel nodded slowly. You're right. It's time. That night, he began planning the most extraordinary shareholders' meeting in Nexus Technologies' history. Richard Harrington's morning routine never varied. He arrived at precisely 8:45 a.m., strode through the lobby without acknowledging the security guard's greeting, and took his private elevator to the top floor where his assistant would be waiting with a non-fat latte and the morning's financial reports. On this particular Monday, Harrington was in an excellent mood. The board had just approved his plan to move 5,000 jobs overseas, saving the company millions in labor costs and securing his 8-figure bonus. The fact that those 5,000 employees were about to have their lives upended was, in his mind, simply the cost of doing business. Good morning, Mr. Harrington, Miguel said quietly as he mopped the marble floor near the executive elevator. Harrington didn't even glance in his direction. After 15 years, he had perfected the art of looking through the maintenance staff as if they were invisible. What Harrington didn't know was that in less than 8 hours, his world would completely unravel. Back in his small maintenance closet, Miguel changed from his work uniform into a crisp button-down shirt. He made a call on a secure phone he kept hidden behind cleaning supplies. It's time, he told his attorney. Initiate Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega was the contingency plan Miguel had developed years earlier, a carefully orchestrated sequence of legal and corporate maneuvers that would reveal his true identity and reassert his control over Nexus Technologies. Meanwhile, the company's day proceeded normally. On the executive floor, Harrington met with his leadership team to finalize the overseas transition. Their discussions were cold, clinical, reducing thousands of lives to numbers on a spreadsheet. We'll need to structure the layoffs in phases, the HR director explained. If we do them all at once, the media backlash could affect the stock price. Just make it happen, Harrington replied dismissively. And make sure the severance packages are minimal. We're not running a charity here. Unknown to them, Miguel was pushing his cleaning cart past the conference room door, capturing every word on a small recording device. On the development floor, Sophia Chen and her team were celebrating a major breakthrough with their new product, an achievement accomplished despite budget cuts and reduced staff. We did it, Sophia announced to her team. And we did it under budget and ahead of schedule. The room erupted in applause, and someone produced a bottle of champagne they'd been saving for this moment. As they celebrated, Miguel entered with his cleaning cart. Miguel! Sophia called out. Come join us. We just hit our milestone. The room fell awkwardly silent as the other team members exchanged glances. Inviting the janitor to their celebration wasn't standard practice. It's okay, Miguel said with a smile. I don't want to intrude. Nonsense, Sophia insisted. You've been cleaning our mess for years. The least we can do is offer you some champagne. A young programmer reluctantly poured a plastic cup of champagne and handed it to Miguel, who accepted it with a nod. To the best development team in the industry, Sophia toasted. No matter what management throws at us, we deliver excellence. To excellence, Miguel echoed, raising his cup. At every level. Something in his tone made several team members look at him curiously, but the moment passed as they returned to their celebration. Later that afternoon, an unusual email arrived in the inboxes of every Nexus Technologies employee. It announced an emergency all-hands meeting at 4 p.m. in the company auditorium, attendance mandatory. The email came directly from the board of directors, bypassing Harrington entirely. The CEO was furious. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, storming into his assistant's office. "Why am I finding out about a company-wide meeting from the same email as the janitors?" "I don't know, sir," his assistant stammered. "The board hasn't responded to my calls." Harrington's face reddened. "Find out what's going on. Now." As word of the mysterious meeting spread, the company buzzed with speculation. The most common theory was that layoffs were being announced. The overseas transition that had been rumored for months. In the women's restroom on the development floor, Sophia found a maintenance worker named Maria in tears. "What's wrong?" Sophia asked. "My cousin in HR told me they're announcing massive layoffs today," Maria sobbed. "My husband just lost his job last month." "We can't." Sophia put an arm around her. "We don't know that for sure. And even if there are layoffs, maintenance probably won't be affected. It's always people like us who get cut first," Maria said bitterly. "The executives never miss their bonuses." As 4 p.m. approached, employees began filing into the auditorium. The mood was tense, with many exchanging worried glances or whispering theories about what was to come. The executive team sat in the front row, with Harrington front and center, still trying to get information from board members who suddenly weren't returning his calls. At precisely 4 p.m., the lights dimmed, and the company's elderly head of the board, Franklin Pierce, walked slowly to the podium. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Pierce began. "Today marks an unprecedented moment in the history of Nexus Technologies." The room fell completely silent. For 15 years, Nexus Technologies has been led by CEO Richard Harrington, Pierce continued. Under his leadership, our stock price has increased and our market capitalization has grown substantially. Harrington smiled smugly, relaxing slightly. This sounded like praise. However, Pierce continued, his tone shifting, there has been growing concern among major shareholders that this financial growth has come at the expense of the company's core values, employee welfare, and long-term sustainability. The smile vanished from Harrington's face. "Today, I am here to announce that the board has received instructions from our majority shareholder who has, until now, chosen to remain anonymous to make significant changes to Nexus Technologies' leadership and direction." A murmur ran through the crowd. Few people even knew there was a majority shareholder powerful enough to dictate terms to the board. "I would like to introduce you to the true owner of Nexus Technologies," Pierce said, gesturing to the side of the stage. "The man who founded this company with a vision of integrity, innovation, and human dignity at its core." The side door opened, and Miguel walked out, still dressed in his maintenance uniform. A confused silence fell over the room. Employees looked at each other, wondering if this was some kind of bizarre joke. Sophia gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth. Harrington leaned over to his CFO. "What kind of stunt is this? Why is the janitor on stage?" Pierce continued, "Many of you know him as Miguel Delgado, a member of our maintenance staff for the past 15 years. But his real name is Miguel Ramirez, the founder of Nexus Technologies and the majority shareholder who has been watching how his company operates at every level." The auditorium erupted in shocked exclamations. Employees turned to each other in disbelief, some laughing, others looking stunned. Harrington's face drained of all color as he stared at the man he had walked past every day for 15 years without a single acknowledgement. Miguel stepped to the microphone. "Thank you, Mr. Pierce. For those who are confused, and I imagine that's most of you, let me explain. Over the next 20 minutes, Miguel told the story of how he founded the company, why he chose to remain anonymous, and what he had learned during his years working as a maintenance employee. I've watched this company from the ground up, he said. I've cleaned the bathrooms of executives who made decisions that hurt thousands of families. I've emptied the trash cans filled with printouts detailing how to maximize profits by minimizing human dignity. And I've mopped the floors where exhausted employees worked late into the night, still believing in the mission I created when I founded this company. The room was completely silent now. But I've also seen incredible acts of kindness, integrity, and innovation, mostly from those of you who aren't sitting in corner offices. I've seen mid-level managers defend their teams against budget cuts. I've seen engineers like Sophia Chen, he nodded toward where she sat, her eyes wide, solve seemingly impossible problems while treating everyone around them with respect. Miguel's gaze settled on Harrington, who seemed to physically shrink under the scrutiny. What I've learned is that culture flows from the top, but it's maintained from the middle and lived at the bottom. And there's a profound disconnect between the values we claim to have as a company and how our leadership actually behaves when they think no one who matters is watching. Miguel picked up a remote control from the podium and pressed a button. Behind him, a screen descended and began playing a compilation of recordings, conversations in executive bathrooms, behind closed doors, in elevators, all featuring Harrington and his leadership team discussing employees as disposable resources, planning environmentally harmful initiatives while publicly claiming to be green, and laughing about the suckers who believed in the company's stated values. Harrington stood up, his face contorted with rage. This is illegal. You can't record private conversations. Actually, Miguel replied calmly, as the majority owner of the building, I can implement security measures as I see fit, and all employees including executives sign a monitoring acknowledgement in their employment contracts. Your own legal department approved it. Though I doubt you bothered to read the fine print you so often use to take advantage of others. Harrington sputtered, looking to his fellow executives for support, but they were all suddenly fascinated by their shoes. Richard Harrington, Miguel continued formally, as founder and majority shareholder of Nexus Technologies, I am removing you from your position as CEO, effective immediately. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings. As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared at Harrington's side. The former CEO looked around wildly, as if expecting someone to come to his defense. Instead, he saw hundreds of employees whose lives he had carelessly impacted over the years, many of them now openly glaring at him. Harrington's shoulders slumped in defeat as he was led from the auditorium, the empire he thought he controlled crumbling around him after Harrington's dramatic exit. A stunned silence hung over the auditorium. Miguel allowed the moment to breathe, understanding that the company's 5,000 employees were trying to process a revelation that upended everything they thought they knew. Finally, he continued, his voice gentler now. I know this is a lot to take in. The janitor you've walked past for years, or perhaps greeted, or ignored, or thanked, is actually the owner of the company. I recognize this is unconventional. A hesitant laugh rippled through the audience, breaking some of the tension. But today isn't actually about Richard Harrington, or even about me. It's about Nexus Technologies, what it was meant to be, what it has become, and what it could be again. Miguel set aside his prepared remarks and stepped out from behind the podium, choosing instead to walk to the edge of the stage where he could be closer to the employees. When I founded this company, the algorithm that became our core product wasn't designed to make me rich. It was designed to make supply chains more efficient, reducing waste and making essential products more accessible to people who needed them. He looked out at the sea of faces, some confused, some angry, many hopeful. Somewhere along the way, that mission got lost. We started prioritizing quarterly profits over people. We began seeing employees as expenses rather than assets. We forgot that a company is not its stock price or its market cap, it's the collective energy, creativity, and humanity of the people who show up every day to do the work. From the front row, one of the remaining executives raised his hand tentatively. Mr. Ramirez, are you saying you're taking over as CEO? Miguel smiled. No, that's not my intention. My strength has always been innovation, not day-to-day management. But I will be leading the search for our next CEO, someone who embodies the values this company was built on. He paused, scanning the crowd until he found who he was looking for. Sophia Chen, would you join me on stage, please? In the middle of the auditorium, Sophia froze, certain she had misheard. Colleagues around her nudged her to stand up. Hesitantly, she made her way to the stage, conscious of thousands of eyes following her progress. When she reached Miguel, he took her hand warmly and turned back to the microphone. For those who don't know Sophia, she's a senior developer who joined us 5 years ago. Since then, she's led the team that developed our most successful product launch in a decade, mentored dozens of junior employees, and advocated tirelessly for more inclusive hiring practices. Sophia looked bewildered, clearly wondering where this was going. But here's what most of you don't know: twice a month, Sophia stays late to teach coding to the maintenance and cafeteria staff who want to learn. She does this on her own time, without publicity or compensation. I know because I was one of her students. A murmur of appreciation spread through the crowd as Sophia blushed furiously. This is the kind of leadership we need, Miguel continued. Not leadership that views people as disposable resources, but leadership that sees people's potential and helps them grow. He turned to face Sophia directly. Sophia, I'm appointing you as interim chief technology officer and asking you to join the search committee for our new CEO. We need your perspective and your values helping to guide this transition. The crowd burst into applause as Sophia's jaw dropped in shock. Mr. Ramirez, I don't know what to say, she stammered. Say yes, he encouraged with a smile. Yes, she agreed, her voice strengthening. Absolutely yes. As the applause continued, Miguel returned to the microphone. Over the next few weeks, I'll be meeting with every department to better understand your challenges and ideas. But today, I want to announce 3 immediate changes. The room fell silent again, everyone's attention rapt. First, the overseas transition plan is cancelled. There will be no layoffs. A wave of relief swept visibly through the audience, with some employees openly weeping or embracing colleagues. Second, effective immediately, we're implementing a profit-sharing program for all employees. When Nexus succeeds, everyone who contributed to that success should benefit, not just executives. This announcement was met with stunned disbelief, followed by enthusiastic applause. And third, we're raising our minimum wage to ensure every person who works at Nexus can live with dignity. The details will be worked out this week, but no one who gives their time and energy to this company should struggle to pay their bills or feed their families. By now, the auditorium was electric with emotion. Employees who had come in fearing layoffs were instead witnessing the revival of the company's soul. I spent 15 years cleaning floors, emptying trash, and being invisible to many of you, Miguel said, his voice growing serious again. That experience taught me something powerful: how you treat people when you think it doesn't matter reveals your true character. And a company's culture is shaped by thousands of these small interactions every day. He gestured to the maintenance staff seated together near the back. I want to especially acknowledge my colleagues in maintenance, security, and food service. These are the people who keep our company running, often without recognition. I've been privileged to work alongside you and learn from you. Your dignity in the face of disrespect has been one of my greatest teachers. The maintenance workers looked at each other in bewilderment, and used to being the center of positive attention. Going forward, dignity will be our North Star at Nexus. Dignity for our employees, our customers, and the communities we serve. This isn't charity or corporate social responsibility, it's sound business. When people are treated with respect and given the tools to succeed, they do extraordinary things. Miguel looked at his watch. I've kept you long enough on what has already been an unusual day. Please, go home to your families. Take time to process this news. And come back tomorrow ready to help build a company we can all be proud of. As employees filed out, the buzz of conversation was deafening. Some were laughing in disbelief, others were already deep in discussion about what these changes might mean for their teams. Maria, the maintenance worker who had been crying earlier, pushed through the crowd to reach Sophia as she descended from the stage. "Did you know?" she demanded. "All those times you brought him coffee and talked to him about code, did you know who he really was?" Sophia shook her head, still dazed. "I had no idea. I just treated him like a human being." "And that," said Miguel, who had come up behind them, "is exactly why you're going to make an exceptional CTO." Later that evening, after the building had emptied, Miguel walked through the quiet halls of Nexus Technologies. He stopped at the executive floor, soon to be reorganized into collaborative spaces accessible to all employees, and ran his hand along the wall he had painted himself 3 years earlier. His phone rang. It was Elena. "It's done," he told her, emotion finally catching in his throat. 15 years of cleaning floors, and today I finally helped clean up the company." "I'm proud of you," she said softly. "Are you coming home now?" Miguel looked out the window at the city lights stretching into the distance. "Just one more thing to do first." He ended the call and walked to the maintenance closet that had been his domain for a decade and a half. Inside, he changed back into his maintenance uniform one last time. Then he took out his mop and bucket and began cleaning the executive floor as he had done thousands of times before. This wasn't an act of humility for show, there was no one there to witness it. Rather, it was Miguel's way of honoring the work he had done and the perspective it had given him. Tomorrow he would step into his role as founder and chairman, but tonight, he would complete one final shift as Miguel the janitor. As he mopped, he reflected on the lesson that had become the guiding principle of his unusual journey. True character is revealed not in grand public gestures, but in how we treat those we believe can do nothing for us in return. 6 months later, Nexus Technologies was transformed. Under the leadership of a new CEO, a woman who had risen from the customer service department to operations through her exceptional ability to solve problems while putting people first, the company was thriving. Profits were actually up, despite the doomsday predictions from market analysts when the employee-centric changes were announced. Miguel, now serving as chairman of the board, still made it a point to eat lunch in the company cafeteria regularly, sitting with different groups of employees each time. Today, he joined Sophia and her development team, who were celebrating another successful product launch. "I still can't believe none of us guessed," one young programmer said, shaking his head. "The owner of the company, mopping our floors for 15 years. "I can believe it," Sophia replied, looking thoughtfully at Miguel. "It takes a special kind of person to care more about building something good than getting credit for it." Miguel smiled but deflected the praise. "The real heroes are the people who treated the janitor with kindness when they thought he was nobody. That's character that can't be faked." And that, perhaps, was the greatest lesson of Miguel's unusual journey. In a world obsessed with status and recognition, there is profound power in being underestimated, in watching, learning, and working quietly toward change that lasts, because sometimes, the most important person in the room is the one no one notices at all. So there you have it, the extraordinary story of Miguel Ramirez, the billionaire janitor who transformed his company from the ground up. While this particular story is fictional, it reminds us of a profound truth: how we treat people when we think no one is watching reveals our true character. The executive who ignores the maintenance worker, the customer who berates the server, the boss who takes credit for their team's work, these small moments define who we truly are. Today, I encourage you to look around at the people who make your world function: the delivery drivers, the cleaning staff, the cashiers, the countless, invisible workers who rarely receive recognition. How might your world change if you treated each of them as if they were the owner in disguise? Because in a very real sense, they are. They own their dignity, their humanity, and their power to affect your world in ways large and small.